Hey everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of the people in my network. So these are great leads to get to those books that I'll be interviewing them on, to find the books that have made the impact on them, that have influenced them, that have made a major impression on them, or that they've written. And in this series, I cover three categories of books. The first category, where they're sharing the book with me that I haven't read. The second category, where we're covering a book we've both read, whether specifically for the series or from our past lives before the series launched. Third category is when I have the author and or publisher on to talk about the book that they want to share, to give it a face, to give it a tone, to give it some backstory, to learn about that person's experience, just so we can see what it is that contributes to that book that's coming out and that they want to get to the masses. And my guest today, again, is Dr. Bridget Cooper. And B is a cage rattler who helps teams and leaders think and communicate more clearly and strategically so they can work and navigate problems proactively and effectively. She works with clients to overcome the attitudes, tactics, and patterns that derail their success through coaching, corporate consulting, and leading workshops that guide and inspire people to live more authentic, peaceful, and powerful lives. TEDx speaker and best-selling author of 7 books on communication, conflict, change, and empowerment, including the 2023 toolkit, Unflappable. Her mission is to change the world one life at a time. And B volunteers for Junior Achievement, Lasagna Love, the Miss America Organization, Connecticut Children's Medical Center, and various other charities near and dear to her heart. And again, as I referenced, this is having on B on the series again. This is her third time on the series. The first was April of 2022, where she covered her book, Pain Rebel, How We Take Our Power Back. Then she came back again in October of 23 to cover her newest book at that time, Unflappable, How Smart People Quit Overthinking, Ditch the Drama, and Thrive at Work. She's somebody I stay in touch with. We see what each other's working on. Met up networking for coffee a couple times. I'm picking her brain about book writing. She's somebody I trust completely, is very inspirational, and I love her energy, and that's why she's back for a third time. So B, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. This is fun. And as you were saying that, I thought to myself, I was the author at 7 books, but now I'm the author of 8. I'm really excited.
That's incredible. Yeah, as I read it, it was the older bio, but as I read it, I'm like, yeah, now it's up to 8. So we clarified that. Congratulations on the newest book, which we'll get into in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
We don't have to go as deep as we've gone in past episodes, because I think people should go back to those past episodes because of the topics, because of the books, everything that we covered. But who are you today in terms of, can you give me some ideas about the work that you're doing day in, day out, what that looks like? The bio was great, but just to give some flavor to the kind of work that you're doing and what you're seeing out there, actually.
Yeah. So thank you. First of all, it's so good to be back here with you, and to the listeners and viewers. You just have such a phenomenal podcast. It's so thoughtful and connecting. And whenever I'm seeing authors or people who are talking about books, I'm always thinking about who would be a good match for you. So I'm really honored that I'm one of those matches today.
Absolutely.
So the work that I do is very varied. I love new things every day, but I do a lot of work one-on-one with clients and you kind of said it in the bio, which is I find myself not just to be a problem solver, but a problem identifier. What I find with clients is that, whether they be corporate clients, personal coaching clients, teams, entire organizations, is that they've been working so bloody hard on trying to solve a problem, but they've often misidentified the problem. So they're working tirelessly, getting frustrated, disenchanted, losing motivation, feeling, sometimes bad about themselves, that they just can't seem to fix this thing in front of them. And when I come in, because I'm coming from the outside, because I've been experienced in this and studied in this, I can see the problem just a little differently, and just that slight, 1, 2, 3 degrees off of the focal point of where they've been looking can transform their understanding of what the problem is. And therefore they can rally different tactics, many of which I provide to them, toward a problem that they just misidentified the source of. And a lot of it has to do with the stories that we tell, the language that we use, the ways that we invest our energy, how we use the gift of time and of experience and of insight. And so, yeah, so I do a lot with one-on-one with clients, leadership and personal clients. I do things with leadership teams where I'm bringing teams together who are having either interpersonal challenges, stress challenges, influx of change in their organization, issues. And then I do a lot of keynotes and workshops at the conference and organizational level to help people, again, see their resources, their power differently so that they can really implement solutions that are going to work for them, for their families, their communities, their companies, and really the world.
So this is an impromptu question.
Sure.
But as I mentioned before, I spoke to you in April of 22, then October of 23. Back then we were kind of in the throes of COVID, right? The world was not quite where it is today. Even in that time since then to now, is there anything that stands out to you about how people are approaching work? Just based on everything we went through, maybe a new appreciation for work, a new way of looking at work. There doesn't have to be, but is there anything that you've noticed since that time where we were in the deepest parts of COVID to now? Is there anything that stands out?
Absolutely. And anything that I say is not universal, right? Because we all are.
Absolutely.
I remember hearing this in COVID, and we might have actually shared this on the podcast or maybe outside of it, of the idea that we're all in the same sea, but we're all in different boats.
Yeah.
And so I think there's this idea that a lot of people experienced different things in COVID, whether it was losses of one kind or another, whether it was listening to certain perspectives on vaccines or another, like all of the things that kind of created our stories and our experiences around COVID. So, but generally speaking, I found that people really, it enhanced their ideas about work-life balance and being very invested in having more freedom in their work and having more agency in their jobs and being able to contribute in ways that were meaningful, like having work be meaningful. And again, I'm talking certain stratas and, obviously our frontline workers, that didn't change a lot other than a lot of them leaving their jobs because they just got burned out. But when I'm talking about like more of the corporate organizational level folks, that's what I've seen a lot of is this idea that I'm not going to live a life that at the end of it, I'm not proud that I lived. So finding meaning in work and finding balance in life, those are two really big focal points that keep popping up and keep being this dramatic tension in companies of how do you get the best from people when these new kind of contracts have been written on the inside of the folks who you have working for you. How do you attract the right talent, retain the right talent, and navigate and negotiate with that talent? So those are a lot of the conversations I'm having with leaders.
So aside from those conversations and those observations, how do you think you've changed from before COVID, maybe from the last time we spoke? How have you evolved being somebody like me that kind of stands on the outside and you're making observations, you're helping people out, but then at the same time, every coach needs a coach. Every coach needs their own self-assessment, self-prescriptions, whatever it may be. How have you changed the most during COVID or post-COVID, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with the launching of Unflappable, which happened, in 2023, and then I had Pain Rebel that came out in 2020, I think and my history with my brain injury. And for those who don't know about it, I guess there's some other episodes and we'll probably pop in and out of that subject matter here. I have had to figure out how to create a cadence that works for me. So a lot of what happened to the general population, at least in the US during COVID, had already in many respects happened to me. Meaning I had enclosed more, I had separated from, more social circles, I had limited my in-person interactions, and I had, created a different cadence for myself. And so I think that shift for me was far less dramatic than it was experienced by a lot of people. So in the last few years, I think I've just sunk deeper and deeper into acceptance of that role, that life, that space that I occupy. And in doing that, I think I've found greater and greater inner calm. I think one of the things that was a trade-off in my old brain was that I was, packing 10 pounds of stuff into a 5-pound bag and jumping between moments and hop skipping and jumping, across things. And I slowed down, but there was a resistance of that slowing that kind of happened for quite some time. And I think when the whole world recalibrated in a lot of ways, it allowed me, I think, even more self-compassion to take hold and be able to stay with that cadence, stay with that more healing, more loving energy, first toward myself and then toward others.
Yeah, it's incredible how there are those traumas that people go through. Many of that I've had guests on that they've experienced that some kind of trauma, right?
Yeah.
And it gets them. It's not preferable. It's not the path that anybody would have chosen, but it gets them to where they are now.
Right.
And they're just killing it because it just, that moment in time, whatever that trauma was, however long it took to get back from that, it just opens up their mind a bit differently to the world around them. So yours is another one of those instances. And I mean, you just kind of spoke to that where it's kind of like, this is what it was like before. And then when that trauma happened, this is kind of the new assessment of I'm limited in so many ways on how I can think things. I need to infuse energy into myself. I need to restore myself first. So it's just another great story of, even though it's not the path one would have chosen, the value that does come out of it if you are open to really receiving it and using it.
Right. Well, I mean, that goes back to, you do this Book Leads podcast on really books are stories. They're stories of perception. They're stories of events. They're stories in lots of different packagings and frills. And it's the way we tell the story that creates what we take from it and what we don't take from it. And
Absolutely.
I think, I remember talking with my attorney during the case, and I said, I think I might be better as a result of this car accident. And he was like, no.
That's the last thing a lawyer wants to hear.
I was like, listen, let's not forget the real permanent structural damage that was done to me and all of the losses that came with it. But I'm, damned if I'm not going to see a silver lining in it of seeing how
Absolutely
it also presented a gift. And I think a lot of people get stuck in stories that, again, solving the problems in front of them, they keep solving them with the old definition of the problem instead of looking at the problem differently enough that they can solve it with new and different tools. And so it's all in storytelling. It all comes down to storytelling.
Absolutely. Now, B, to understand how you ended up here, could you give us a walkthrough of your experiences since, leaving college or entering the workforce, whatever it might be? We went into this in depth in the first couple episodes, so we don't need to go that deep because I do want people to check out the other episodes. But I mean, the highlights for you that really stand out, that really were pivot points that helped you move forward, whether they were good or bad.
Yeah,
what do you think?
That's a
what
great question. Well, first off, I could share that the longer I stay on this planet, the longer in the rearview mirror graduating from college is, and therefore the longer the stories can get.
I mean, since the first time we spoke, it's now 3 years. So even that.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think, it used to be, it's that old adage of like, when you think 1980 was 20 years ago, you're like, whoops,
Yeah, 2019 was just last year.
Exactly.
Pre-COVID.
Exactly. So, I think, well, first I'll say, from a professional standpoint, I call myself Goldilocks because I started off, actually it's funny, this is kind of a funny little anecdote, which leads into it. This is actually my first book. And I know this is funny. It's not published, but look, I mean, contact paper, come on, like amazing. Oh, author photo from the 1980s, right?
Nice.
But in this book,
we all have those.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty rare find.
Believe me, we all have those.
Okay.
Believe me.
So I wrote a book when I was going into high school, and I talked about what I thought I was going to be when I grew up. And what I said was a stay-at-home mom and a part-time psychiatrist. And in my vernacular and my understanding of what that looked like, it meant I wanted to focus on my children, but have a career outlet where I was able to help people. And so when I went into college, I tried to find the practical thing because I needed to fend for myself. And, going to be a psychiatrist was going to take many, many years of schooling. And I didn't have the money support, option for that at the time. So I thought, ooh, how about HR? Human resources is like business, but psychology. Like I'll put those two things together and I'll make that work. And I got into it. And I, again, likened myself to Goldilocks. I thought, this is too firm. Like it's not helping people to the depths that I thought I could help people. So I stopped doing that and I went back to grad school for marriage and family therapy. And then I thought, well, this is a little too soft, people, because, I was dealing with, severe addiction and just all sorts of things that were very triggering for me and also very complex. And it was heavy. So I pulled out of that and I thought, let me go into a university administration. That's what I was doing during grad school. Went into that and had some great projects I worked on, created a summer camp for kids in the aftermath of 9/11 of all things in Washington, D.C. And I ended up getting my doctorate in educational leadership. And when I came to this moment in my life of saying, I don't want to be working for someone else. I want the freedom to do what I want with my kids. That's when I created my business, which is 21 years ago. And I think it was funny and startling, really, to look back and find that book in my scrapbooks and realize that I ended up being exactly where I intended to be, even though my path was fairly roundabout. And, in that time, in the 21 years that I've been doing this, I've been, consulting with leaders. I've been doing talks. I've coached countless people, written now 8 books. And it's been everything that I hoped it would be. And I think the cadence and the volume of it have been different depending on with, raising my children and now with the brain injury, those kinds of things have been a bit different. But I cannot express how grateful I am that I get to do what I get to do in helping people move through hard and challenging and then celebratory moments in their personal and professional lives. It's what's Barnum and Bailey, it's the greatest show on earth. No, this is the greatest role on earth. I feel really good about it. And I think to answer your question of what were the things that kind of made those pivot points possible, is that I wasn't afraid to reinvent myself and start over. I wasn't afraid I can't say I wasn't afraid, but I didn't allow the amount of the fear to stop me from recreating myself because and I've probably shared this on a podcast before, but I really believe that when you end this world and you're just asked 3 questions, and it's, did you have fun? Did you use the gifts I gave you to the best of your ability? And did you try to leave every situation and person better than you found them? And we're all imperfect and we all flub up a number of those things. But because my driving force was toward giving back to the world to the best of my abilities, using the gifts that I had, it forced me to continue to reckon whether or not that was happening, whether or not I was actually doing that. And so that created a door open to that opportunity, because really, how dare I not do that? How dare I not put the best of me out in the world? Like, why was I given this air and vessel and, whatever opportunities I have in front of me? So I think that in and of itself was the marker for all of those moments.
Where did that come from? The 3 questions, like, what age were you when those really hit you? Why do you think you came up with those? How did you think about, what was it that triggered you to think about, okay, at the end, when I'm asked these 3 questions, I want to make sure that I have the right responses. How did that paradigm come to be?
I wish I had an answer to that question, John. I don't even know. I know when I said it out loud for the first memorable time, it was to one of my students in Catholic education. I was a Sunday school teacher, basically. and they asked me what heaven was like. And I said, puppies and chocolate, and these 3 questions, right? Like I was pretty basic about it. But I do think that the origin story of that knowing was watching my parents suffer to exist and seeing the pain that not only they consumed and steeped in, but handed off. And so I knew that the recipe behind not being in pain continually and like having that as like being a badge of honor or giving it more than was human laid in those questions, you know, of holding on to the fun. Like when my parents were at their best, they were laughing and joking and having fun. They were light. They didn't give the world their best qualities almost ever. And they could have, and then they did in pockets and places and moments, but that wasn't the structure of their lives. And leaving situations better than they found them, some for sure. You know, I think it's balanced to say some, but I think I think if they had been more focused on that, I think they would have been in less pain, and therefore they would have created less pain. So yeah, but I don't have a moment. I can't tell you there was no like the laboratory was life, right? The laboratory of that recipe was life. And I just remember that kid coming to me, and he was like 2nd grader, so he got like 1 fraction of it. He remembered the puppies and chocolate probably more than anything. But it became that, and then it stuck. It stuck.
So what it was something you said that I wanted to I think what stood out the most is those questions, what you want to work towards to make sure that you have the right questions to whatever force it is, whatever energy you think is going to pose those questions, or whatever the universe is going to ask you, that the responses, the right responses, right? We have a general idea of what the right response is, like, you know, do good, be good, have fun, leave it better than you found it. I think they're 3 very simple questions. And the craziest thing is you don't need to be rich to do it.
No.
You don't need to be a world traveler to do it. You can do it in the everyday. You can do it in passing. You can do it with a stranger, like just those micro moments, those micro interactions you have with people. So that's the best part about that is you don't have to be a college graduate. You don't have to be a doctor, lawyer, nothing like that. Anybody can do it. It's just a matter of really hearing it put the way that you have and recognizing it, that it is you've had your own traumas, but it is in the end, it is your choice to see how you want to proceed with building those answers that you would give at the end.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's that military concept of backward planning, right? Which is starting with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And I do that. I do that with my clients. I do that with myself. And you're right. You don't need resources to be able to do that. I've talked with people about, like, you know, living your life purpose. Well, what if I'm a garbage man, or what if I'm a, whatever, like pick a career that they're not seeing a mission in, you know? And I said, yeah, but you can smile at everyone you drive past. You can put fun things in your rearview mirror that make people smile. You can, there are ways that you can, in your everyday life, in your job, live out who you are through that. Because it's, again, the story you tell. If it's, I have to be a garbage person and I don't like that and I hate that, well, then you're going to bring that energy to every experience you have in that. But if you say, I get to go through neighborhoods and see different houses, and I get to see the dogs, and I'm going to count how many dogs I see, whatever, all of a sudden that's your energy. And and when you have energy that is of that higher elevation, you are drawn to, and you draw towards you similar energy and opportunities for better conversations, for better relationships, for better health. All of those things start to circulate. And so it's really those, like you said, micro moments, those tiny little moments are the ones that really make a difference.
And another major point, obviously, in your life that you've referenced, that I've referenced based on our conversations in the past, is your accident.
Yeah.
So obviously in this conversation, I've asked, let's let people go for the deeper story in the other conversations. But your accident is a major point in your life. Can you explain to people what happened for those that haven't heard the other episodes?
Yeah, so about almost 7 years ago, I was a passenger in a vehicle, and a driver for hire came across the intersection, slammed into the passenger side, which is where I was seated, and flipped the car and sent us up the road on the roof. And to be honest, and this all was in, in the record, but I had had so many concussions before that time. And that's part of my, origin story, right? But I had so many concussions before that. And there had no question in my mind when I was feeling the after effects of that concussion that it was going to get better in a day, 2 days, 3 days. That's what I did. That's how things happened. And it didn't. And so what ended up happening was I was diagnosed with a permanent brain injury, lost 25 IQ points. I have a visual and auditory processing disorder. You can probably notice while I'm on camera, I'm drinking water. So I don't chew gum because I wake up and I go to bed nauseous, and I'm nauseous every minute in between from the dizziness that comes from having two of my major senses not taken information in a clear way. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just been a journey of acceptance of what is versus what I want it to be, and also of figuring out how to modify and manage and really give myself compassion for those moments when I need to check out, or I need to dial back, or I need to say no to something, or I need to rest. And that's not something that I was always very comfortable with. And so that's why, I made that comment of it's made me a better person. I think in some ways it has challenged me to become a better version of myself in a lot of ways.
When the other thing that really stands out is the way that it affected the way you work. So for reference, how many books had you put out up until then?
And so I put out, 5 in the first 3.5 years. So 3.5 years, I put out 5 books. And then after that, I had written the 6th, mostly. I had, had most of the notes. I had to kind of flesh out some things and reorganize some things, but I had the lion's share of the work done. The accident happened in 2018. That book came out in mid-2020. And then the next book came out in fall of 2023. Mm-hmm. And then there's this one. And the thing about the one from fall of 2023, which I think is important to note, and as well as the one that's about to come out, is that they are in many respects reanimations of prior work, meaning I took my toolkit and I put it all in one place. So it wasn't an origination, which most of the prior books had been start from scratch kind of thing. Mm-hmm. This was very much let me see how much I can just cull from other sources that I already have written and then make it and put that together. And I think in a lot of respects, these last 2 books are my best books because I've had to be so incredibly diligent and deliberate and focused on small parts and building small parts into larger parts, where before I could do stream of consciousness, which in some respects isn't as great, So I think it's, I hold myself in honor in that. But yeah, so it was, and I've shared the story before. I may have shared it on a previous episode. I felt like I was racing to something, John. Like I was trying to get these books out. Like I would have a book idea. I would finish the book. I wouldn't even have the book printed, and I'd be working on the next one and then on the next one. And I would insert a book in between a book that I was already working on. And it was this fever pitch. I mean, I was working, I was raising my kids, et cetera. And I look back and I go, oh, because if I hadn't done it at that pace, I wouldn't have had those pieces to draw back to when I wanted to do something after the accident. So in a sense, there was some purpose in it that whether I, woo-woo science knew about it in advance or it just happened to line up that way beautifully for me, but it did. And so if I hadn't raced that, I don't know what my content would look like today.
Yeah, it's interesting how that plays out. Like there's timing, there's a moment for everything, that it all happens when it's supposed to. all that sounds so fucking cliche, but and maybe it is coincidental, who knows, but
Yeah.
it just seems like if you're working in the right direction, if you're trying, if you're doing your due diligence, if you're a good person, um, it's that mix of opportunity that luck is opportunity, but that you have to be ready to take it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, you
Um,
can have all the luck in the world if you don't take advantage of it. You can
yeah,
walk right past the open door.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've had a lot of people who have been in my midst and in relationship with me at all different levels and all different places who have been, angels of sorts in the sense of clarifying things for me or challenging me or, setting me on the right path. And so I think we do get through this also by taking in, like the book leads, taking in information and insights and perspectives of other people that might be different than ours so that we can really learn to incorporate those into our own healing and success journeys.
Yeah, I met you, I think maybe late 21, maybe it was 22, right before we did record the first
Mm-hmm.
episode. But what the people that did know you before the accident, have they
Mm-hmm.
had this kind of conversation with you about the work that you're doing now, your approach to it, what you bring to it because of the accident? Has that come up at all about, you used to be this
Yeah.
kind of person or this kind of professional, now it's different, but
Interesting.
has it been that kind of conversation with anybody or no?
That's a great question. So I think first, the people who who didn't know me before the accident cannot see what the people who knew me before the accident can. Right? Like they don't have a thing to judge that against. So I just did a keynote last week in Maine, and people came up and I, mentioned it very briefly. I usually just kind of nod my head to it about, that was a situation for me. And that's how I learned some of the tools in Unflappable, was by having to mark that territory myself with my own journey.
Mhm.
And they said, I don't see it. I can't, it's imperceivable. Like, I don't understand how is that possible? And so, okay, which I get and I understand. And I think there's a little sadness in that of, yeah, they can't see my struggle, but at least they're appreciating that I'm going through one. Right. But I think it's the people who did business with me before that can appreciate some of the cadence difference. And I think it's also important to note that, and this happens for a lot of people with chronic illnesses or permanent injuries of this sort, is it's like a duck on a pond. You look at a duck on a pond and you're like, what
So
a
graceful, so
chill dude,
beautiful.
right? They're just like
They're not
coasting
doing anything. They're
along.
just
They're just going, they're just gliding on life's surface, right? And then
yeah,
you get a little cam and you realize underneath they're like paddle, 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 right? Like
they're
they're going
dying.
fiercely. They're like getting like the biggest
Yeah,
workout, right?
yeah.
And I think how I am different, it can be best summarized by the ducks paddling, is that in my earlier iteration, I did just glide across the water.
Mm,
And now I'm paddling for my life, right? Like it's that kind of, it takes me that much energy and effort to pull myself up onto
yeah.
that, like that level. Whereas before, my energy was actually going in the opposite direction. I was dialing it down to be palatable to those who couldn't take the volume of energy that I actually brought to a moment. I had a friend of mine, I joke with her still about it, that she and her husband, when I would visit, they're like, only one Diet Coke for you. Only one. Because like 2 Diet Cokes and Dr. B,
I
forget
mean,
that. Like,
I know the energy you have today. I can't imagine it being more. And then what you said before about losing IQ points, I'm like, because I think you're fucking brilliant now. So it's like, oh my
thanks.
God.
I know, like too smart. No, it was, so the areas of intelligence that were affected most. So my analytical ability and my verbal acuity, those are still, where they were ish. But it's in the recall and the processing speed.
Yeah.
So where I find myself, where I struggle, 2 places. One is that when I get stressed, it's much harder for me to navigate things when I tend to shut down because I don't recalibrate as well as I used to. So I do a lot of things to not get stressed, which helps again, because I've learned tools that I can teach other people. And the second thing is, if I'm talking and I know what I'm supposed to be saying, I'm good. If I'm getting new questions, new inputs that I wasn't expecting, or I didn't have any kind of framework
Like the
for,
random questions I just threw you?
I mean, a
Were
little,
those
but
okay?
like,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was fine. But if you start asking me like my perspectives on, Middle East conflict in the 1940s or whatever, even if I had an opinion on it that
Yeah,
I could dig up, I'm going to have a much harder time creating sentences and pulling together thoughts, because it's that retrieval of information, that's
Yeah.
the part of my brain that got most affected. And so I work a lot with different puzzles and things, trying just to stay focused enough to be able to remember things better than I'm inclined to. Yeah.
B, does it make sense? Well, the other question I had about you, when talking about going to college, you said, well, or as a kid, you were like, in the future, I want to be, I believe you said, a psychiatrist,
Mm-hmm.
part-time, raise my kids, stay at home mom. What was it that drew you towards the psychiatry? What was it that drew you towards that area? I mean,
I
why?
mean, do we have to ask? I mean, I think,
Well, I know it now, but I don't know where that originated. Like,
it originated from me looking around at I think I can swear, shit show that was my family, and going, somebody needs to come in here and fix this. Like clean up an aisle, every aisle,
yeah, throughout the
right?
store.
Yeah, like the whole store. Let's just burn it down. Let's just burn down the store. So I think it was so trained to be a people pleaser and a helper and a savior, really. I mean,
Yeah.
like not like him, but like me. Um, that I needed tools. I needed to go figure out how I could go fix things, because I needed to fix things. I needed to help people. And, I went back to school to get my master's in marriage and family therapy. And a couple weeks into school, my dad died. And I was like, well, what am I here for? Like, I was coming here to try to fix this. So I think that was what drew me, was this idea that, one, I wanted to fix what I was in. And I think, two, there has been, and it continues in me, this drive in me that even if I can't help them, and I couldn't help myself then, I can help people now, because of the breadth and depth of experience that I've had. I have I've honed insight. I have invested in problem solving, and I have created my own tools and practiced them with others to be able to not be submerged by the trauma that is life.
Yeah. So the next question I typically ask is, how does it make sense from your childhood that this is what you're doing now, that this is where you are? So I think you answered that.
Zero connection, John. I'm kidding.
Question covered.
Who could have known? I don't even know how
right?
I got here. Yeah, right.
But again, I mean, it just works back to, not the preferable road that anybody would have preferred to have, that anybody would have selected. But in hindsight, you make something from, what's thrown at you, what you're thrown into, the mire, the bog. You made something of it, and now you're changing lives with it. So it's just incredible that sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah. And we all get to choose that, and we get to keep choosing that. I talk with clients who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, who are having these awakenings of, oh my gosh, I signed this contract as a kid that this is how I was going to believe things about myself and about the world and about work and whatever. And we can burn those things up now. Like, there's nothing stopping anyone from having a very different life, a very different self-concept, a very different path than whatever the things are that they're entertaining in the confines of their own
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
And so that's the when I call myself a cage rattler, I'm talking about the cages that we're all trapped in, that we all have the keys to. And I'm just standing there outside going, jingle, jingle. Do you want to take the key? Because you can get out of here. So yeah, it's been fun.
And people may hear that and think, because we've been programmed like that since childhood, that we accepted that narrative, that script, that they have to be seismic movements, seismic changes to feel different.
Nope.
I think there's always that disconnection between here's where I am and this is what I would have to do to feel different. But I think we might have spoken about this before, but even it's little things. I think we might have. It might have been my conversation with you where it's like, even if you just take a different direction to work,
Yeah. You change your
just
brain.
experiencing something. Exactly. You're breaking that kind of monotony, that kind of regular program. Even something as simple as that can change
Correct.
the way that you see the world. So B,
Completely.
I forget, I added this question at some point during the run of the podcast, but what do you consider your superpower? And if you've already spoken about it and you say, well, this is, I've already talked about it, great. If not,
Uh,
what would you say is your superpower?
I wish we were flying. That would be so much fun. I think I I think I'm my persistence. I really, and it has so many features to it. Like, I don't think it's one thing, right? But I think this persistence of love for the human condition, like this persistence of energy to just keep going, this persistence of looking at a problem until I can figure out what it is. It's a persistence. It's just this innate, I used to be called driven, and I don't know, driven maybe might be it, but it doesn't feel like I'm not at the wheel. It used to feel like I wasn't at the wheel, and now I'm at the wheel, but I'm persistent. Yeah.
Okay. And then last question before we jump into the book, what does
Oh,
leadership mean to you?
uh, leadership means taking out your own head trash so that you can not add it to other people and you can help them see their own. I mean, I really think it's so important as leaders to recognize the influence and the power that we have at our fingertips, really, to help or damage other
Yeah.
people. And when we don't invest in our own growth and expansion, we not only don't give other people the encouragement and the permission to do it themselves, but we add to their burdens. So I think being more enlightened, more,
Yeah.
constantly trying to improve ourselves. I think that's a feature of leadership that is starting to, and not starting, but I think it's taking even a deeper hold in this environment to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think leaders or supervisors, if it's a formal role, or
Yeah.
managers, I think they underestimate just how much of an impact they have on somebody's life.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
people
Sunday
don't leave
scaries and
companies. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. I think they underestimate just how that it's not just about the building up, but the tearing down. Are you doing that inadvertently? Are you not thinking about that? But I like that they have to really consider the impact and the effect that they have, that it's not just the results that are
Mhm.
achieved, but like how is this, again, it goes back to your three questions. Did you leave something better than you found it? Whether it's
Right.
your relationship with somebody you're leading over the course of
Yeah.
the entire relationship, or even on a daily basis. Like, is this person walking out fucking
Right.
defeated? Are they
Right.
walking out broken? Are they feeling less than because of something I said? Everybody's going to come up against challenges, but when somebody is ignorant and doesn't know that they wield that much power,
Right.
that awareness can kind of offset that.
I mean, they keep me busy, honestly, like all these, really
We can't fix
debilitating
them all,
bosses.
or else yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I wish I could work myself out of a job, but I don't know that it's possible.
No,
But
no. I think there's
but
always lessons to learn. I mean,
yeah.
you and I think about this stuff all the time in the
Mhm.
work that we do, and we're still evolving. We still have to learn. I know I'm not at the top of my game with all the things that I've written about.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need reminders just to kind of bring myself in, just to open up that awareness about what
Mhm.
I'm doing, the impact. So we're works in progress.
We definitely are, for sure. Yeah, thankfully.
So let's jump into the book.
Oh,
Why don't you tell me first the name of the book, because we haven't mentioned that at all.
okay. So first, I have to start with the story.
Sure.
So as you mentioned, I've been writing books for a lot of years. I started in 2013, and my younger daughter, who graduates from college in just a couple of weeks, but now by the time this airs, she just graduated. She came up with this idea that I should write a book and I should call it The Book. she was very punny, you know, she would say things about things being Gouda instead of good, you know the age. Anyway,
Yeah.
so so she came up with this idea that I should call a book and call it write a book and call it the book. And I just kind of said, that's the terrible marketing approach. Like, what do you, like, why would I do that? I'm like, and I said, what is the book about? And she said, you know, how you book things. It's about time. And I went, huh, okay, well, you've got my little bit of my interest. But John, I didn't have any interest in writing this book, like zero interest. And every time I wrote a book, she would bring it back up again and say, well, when are you going to write the book? It's not the book, you know, because she's sassy. I don't know where she gets it from.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And so, so anyway, fast forward, now I've written 7 books, you know, Unflappable back in 2023. And last summer, I realized, she's graduating from college, May of 2025. And maybe I write the book, but I don't tell her. So I started writing the book late last summer, organizing it, right? And then I pulled it together. So she will actually see it for the first time. It's out there. It's on Amazon. It's been on Amazon for a few weeks. Because I had to publish it in order to get author copies. But she doesn't know, to my knowledge, everyone's been telling me that the secret has been kept, that I've written the book. And not only have I written the book, but in it are 30 people who have contributed to the book, who have contributed to her life over the years with their own perspectives on time and decision making and procrastination and overthinking and all of those things that trap us in this time warp. And people since elementary school, middle school, high school, favorite professors, friends, sister, boyfriend, coaches, bosses, everything. So they've all been keeping this secret since the fall, and it comes out. So the book is The Book. So she was in charge of the title, the book. I got to be in charge of the subtitle. So the subtitle is How to Navigate Clocksuckers to Live a Happy, Abundant Life.
The pause.
I had to, because they were like, did she just say, no, I said clock, there's an L in there. I said clocksuckers. So it's how to navigate clocksuckers and lead a happy, abundant life. And what it is, you know, much like Unflappable, it's tool-based. So there are 53 tools, 52 weeks and a bonus. And they are underneath pillars of how I think about the struggles with time, which is, you know, the intentionality that we bring to a moment, the presence that we hold in a moment, the way that we navigate decisions, and the way that we implement efficiencies. And that last one, that efficiencies part, is usually how people address time management. Like, how can I code something or color something or schedule something? And sure, those things are important with the use of time. But if you don't have a handle on the other parts, then time just simply slips through your fingers.
So when you decided to do this, you gave a great breakdown of what it looks like now, the different areas, but what did it look like trying to outline that, trying to get to that?
Right. So you know, because of how my brain works and because of the heavy lift that it was, the first thing I did was I went back to Unflappable and I said, how many of these tools inform someone's struggle with time? And basically all of them. So I thought, okay, I can't use all of them. That would be that would not be the way to do this. Just rename Unflappable and just give a different context. But I did go back and I knew that there were enough that were formative in understanding my views of things and how people work and, you know, individuals work and relationships and all that I had to pull some of them, or the book would have just fallen without a platform, right? So there are about 12 or 13 of the tools from Unflappables, almost 70, that found their way back into the book. And the rest of them are new or reinvented or you know, brand new tools that I put in there. And so what I started doing was coming up with first that depository of the ones that needed to come from Unflappable somehow. And then I started trying to figure out how I would group any of them. Like, what were the major concepts? What was the underlying premise of the book? And what was necessary to meet it? And what I wanted was this guidebook, basically, of recognizing how we encounter the passage of time and how we can change that encounter. to our own and to our, the benefit of others. And, the other quick line on the front of the book is take charge of your time and energy so you can stress less and smile more. It's really about improving the quality of our lives by looking at the way that we go through time differently. And so it was really about figuring out what were the premises, the necessities underneath that: intention, presence, good decision making, having efficiencies, that then created the drawers, basically those compartments for all of the tools that were going to go in it.
So when she suggested what it might be about, what was it that she was seeing? Where did that come from? That's what her recommendation was for what the book could be. Were you at that point? Were you?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
She just thought it was funny to call a book the book. Like, I think she was just being ironic, and she was like, 11.
That I get. But she did reference something about how you work, time. So where did she get that from?
Because she said how you book time. She saw me with my physical planner putting notes in, and I was booking an appointment. I was booking a gig. I was booking a client. I was booking time. And so she saw the dual meaning of book and book as a verb, and thought the book. And I said, can I name it Book It? She said, no, it has to be the book. I was like, dude, I don't even know what to do with you.
She's going to lose it.
Well, it's also, can I share a couple details about it?
Yeah. I was going to ask, but go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. What did you want to share? What did you want to share?
I'm just going to share the cover, and then we can go to some of the inside. So a lot of the little like Easter eggs that are in this is that the cover, these colors, were motivated by a photo that we took when we were on a vacation recently in Puerto Rico. And this is the colors that were in this underwater sea turtle picture that we took.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And then the orange is Syracuse orange for where she's graduating from. And then the time on the clock is 11:11, because we text each other for angel number times. And then the second hand is at 31 for the number of countries she's been to.
Oh, wow.
So there are all these little teeny, and they're all throughout the book, but there's all these teeny little nods that are, they have no effect on the reader, and doesn't change their perception or interpretation of the tools that are in it, but it made it her book without taking away the book from the general population.
That's awesome. What did you want to share on the inside?
Oh, there's so much. We have questions. I don't want to take away your questions.
No. Yeah, you could definitely share after. I just have 3 types of questions.
Let's do it.
Can you give an example of an exercise you used with the Unflappable as the foundation for it? An exercise that comes over from there?
Right. So like, as an example, one of the biggest ones, awareness equals choice and choice equals power. So that is a premise of mine that carries through every lesson I teach, every presentation I do. If I don't say it explicitly, I refer to it implicitly, that the more awareness we have, the more choices we create in how we can address a problem, a feeling, an action, a thought, whatever it is. And from that number of expanded choices, we have more power for ourselves, not over others. And so that's a thing. Like, I had to have awareness equals choice and choice equals power in this, or it wouldn't, all the things that I was saying wouldn't have made any sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you provide an example of a new one?
Oh, so this is a funny one. So because it's my book, I get to title things any way I want to title things.
Of course.
And for those who may know that I have a fascination with otters. I think otters are adorable. My kids are always sending me videos of otters, photos of otters. Anyway, so I was sitting there one night, and I thought I had come across some, different resources on relaxation. And I thought, okay, so one of the tools I know of that you can do when you're like overthinking or ruminating on something, and you just keep cycling over and over again something in your head, and you need to break yourself from that neurochemical pattern. You need to like slap your hands together, do something. I wanted to give some tools, some approaches to that. So I decided to create this narrative on picking a 4 to 6 letter word, right? So I picked otter. And you imagine that word that object, that thing, in as much rich detail as you possibly can. So you start thinking about every possible thing about an otter. Its slippery skin, its cute little nose, its whiskers, whatever.
Mhm.
And then for each one of the letters of that word, you come up with a new one. So O could be owl, and T could be tire or whatever. And you just come through these. And for each one of those words, you do the same thing you did with the original overarching word. And I found by the time I got to like the third letter, I was out like a light. I was sleeping, right? And so I named the tool Think an Otter Thought. Yeah,
Nice.
I did. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Yes, I did that. I did that.
Yeah, I did that. I did that. It made me laugh. So yeah, but it's that kind of thing. It's like, it's trying to be playful, but
Yeah.
effective. And that's how I teach.
And then the last one that I wanted to ask in terms of the book and what might be in there is, can you give an example of somebody that did contribute from your daughter's life, from her career, from her education? Not saying you're picking the best. I'm not making you choose the best.
Okay.
But is
All
there
right.
one that
So,
stands out, maybe that relates to what we've talked about, or that you know of me and our conversations in the past? So I don't want to put it in your hands to pick somebody, but
all right, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right. So I think this is the most indicative of the process. So first of all, what I originally planned to do was to insert all of their little, their short excerpts into the frame of the book, and then the layout person was like, "Kill me now, because you're going to add things in late, and then we're going to have to reformat entire things." And I said, "Okay, I'm saving you. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a little like drawer in the end of each one of the pillars, and that's going to be where all of the ones that relate to that previous pillar go." And so I called that section Nuggets of Wisdom. Now, because we're friends on Facebook, you might know that my dog Nugget died in January. So even naming it Nuggets of Wisdom had symbolism. Anyway, So tracking back, when I started asking folks, one of her favorite teachers, sorry, all the other teachers, but one of her favorite teachers from elementary school, it was that teacher's first teaching year when she taught my daughter. And so she was new and insecure and unsure and unsteady. And my daughter came in and helped her set up her classroom. I was PTO president, so like I was, in the school a lot. And they developed this bond that persevered for a number of years until COVID stood in the way of her being able to stop in to wherever this teacher was teaching and bring her presents and et cetera. Anyway, I reach out to this teacher. She's quit teaching. She's a stay-at-home mom for 4 children. And what she says to me so insecurely of like, "I don't know, I haven't written anything. It's going to be garbage. Like, I'm afraid." And she had all of these hesitations. And I can't read the whole thing because I pulled out some of the excerpt, but I'm going to read to you what she said. "It's okay to spend your time believing in yourself. At the very core of procrastination and indecisiveness is self-doubt. Why else would you hesitate to make a decision or a commitment? Why else would you allow stress, worry, or comparison rob you of trusting your gifts? Society has imposed an incorrect narrative that what you offer to the world can be measured by the number of degrees you have, or how much money you make, or how many followers you've collected on social media. Here's the truth. You are important because you are you, and that is enough. It's okay to ignore societal guideposts that do not bring joy or meaning to your life. Trust that instead, the decisions you make will always be the right ones because you are their driving force. When you start to wonder if your life is taking the right path, or if your next steps feel vague or overwhelming, quiet those voices of doubt. Spend your time believing in yourself. Spend your time trusting the answers will find you. Spend your time believing that you already have everything you need within yourself to live a limitless life. Believe in that fierce third grader you once were, who understood her power then, but can now use her gifts to define her own tomorrow. I was like, dude, I don't even understand. God. Right? And let me tell you, I pulled out the part that she did.
Because you said she's like, "Oh, I don't know. I haven't written in so long."
I have read that to people and they're like, "Can I slap her? Can I slap her?" Because I don't even like, So, but you have to understand that that's not even the best of it, because there was another paragraph that was dedicated to my daughter, in how my daughter navigated those moments and made a difference in this woman's life. That's in a separate thing, a keepsake that I made for my daughter, but it was more too personal to like put in the, the
Yeah.
overarching. It would have been out of place to be so directed at her. So I pulled that to a separate place. But come on, like that.
Yeah.
So there she is talking about being insecure about her writing. And then she talks about facing your own insecurities. Like, that's the thing about people, is that we limit ourselves.
I mean, that's why
More.
we always say, when you're going through something, how would you talk a friend through it?
Exactly.
Because we know
Exactly.
how to talk somebody else through it, but we don't I don't know where
Yeah.
that disconnect is. It's
Right.
just
But
yeah.
there she gave that gift, and I was like, thank you for taking a time out of momming to mom the heck out of this book, because that was
Yeah.
just like, it was, yeah.
No, that
So
was beautiful.
there are treasures like that throughout it, and I'm so. And there was another moment, another contributor, young woman who was also graduating, and she was really torn about a big decision she had of where she was going to live, to pursue which career kind of type. And she kept putting off responding to me. And I knew she wanted to be part of it, but she just was blowing me off, like, like nonstop.
Yeah.
And I finally got to the point where it's like, dude, I have to have this tonight, or it can't be in the book, and that'll break my heart. And what she shared with me was, it was so hard to write about the very thing she was in the middle of the struggle about. But in writing about it, it became clear what she needed to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we can use books, how we can use writing, how we can use journaling, is by allowing ourselves to find that wise part of us that knows exactly what we need to be thinking and doing, that if we just let it open, we would be able to follow that sage wisdom.
Do you journal, B?
uh, no, I just write books, John.
Okay. Not to take anything away. Yeah. It's like book after book after book. You're like, I have no time to journal.
Like, dude, no, I used to, but I tuck the notes that I have away, to be able to, why not put them out there in the world where they can do somebody else some good. I don't
Yeah.
need, I don't need them as much as
Mhm.
I want to be able to offer them if there's something smart in them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. I've asked you this before, but in writing this book, I can
Hmm.
imagine what you've taken away. But in writing this book, in the process of collecting all these thoughts, all these messages from people from your daughter's life, how and she doesn't know about it yet, but how has this book being out, how has putting it together
Mm.
changed you? Is there anything that's evolved? Is there anything that's evolved in terms of how you see what you've written? Obviously, we just spoke about it. When you write something,
Mm.
even though you maybe have already thought about it, have lived with it, but there's something about writing it, putting it together in a book. How has
Mm.
this book changed you?
That's a great question. I was just thinking about, I was actually explaining this to someone this morning. One of the things that I was very focused on from the beginning of writing the book, and all of the moments in it, and who I chose to work with on the cover and interior design, like all of the facets of it, was that I was very focused that I could not allow, so therefore I had to anchor toward love in the generation of this book. Because if I got caught up in the stress of it, or the frustrations that naturally occur in a large project, or the people I bump into as I try to navigate my way through problems, then it would reflect for me stress of a book, stress of a process. And this is, as much as I could put together, it's a vehicle of love. It's really what it comes down to. Is it was a way of me being able to do something funny, but
Mhm.
also do something meaningful, as a mom, and as a person, and as a professional. And if I came at it with anything other than love, it would somehow dilute its purpose, and also not be consistent with the underlying premise of the book, which is that that's what we're supposed to do, is to come at these moments with intention, with presence, with decisiveness, and so I needed to live out its own meta message in my own process. And so I think I learned what I learned about myself in that is, one, that I have the capacity to turn stress off, right? Like to almost like dial it down to the point where it's almost imperceivable, because love and passion kind of moves it away. It's like it's not energetically compatible. And two, I think how much love I really do have. Like, I know that I've always known that, but this allowed me to really sink into how you can keep expressing that to every person you talk to, every moment you have, every opportunity you give, like all of that. You can really, like, coming from love is just, it's just where it's at. If I want to sound hippie, like, it's where it's at.
No, that's fine. It's interesting how people may not know how much love they have to share. And how much goes unexpressed because maybe they don't think they can, maybe they don't think they should, maybe they're not even aware of it.
Right.
Something feels off in their life. They don't know what it is. It may be that energy of love having to get out of you, but you don't even know it's there. You don't even know it's an option.
Right.
So it's just interesting, just the way you put that, that it showed you how much love you really have to put out there. And there's just so many people that are just unaware of what they can tap into.
Right. And I think when what I have noticed is that all the moments that weren't about the book were easier because of the love with which I went toward the book. Like with every conversation I had, with every contributor, with the designers, with like whatever, I was able to stay in that energetic pattern the most. And it is really, it has me at a different frequency, and like when I'm in different moments that invite me to share something, I'm much more coming from that place. And that's just to me, that's a gift of this process. So I'm excited.
At what percent of completion do you think you were when you got that excerpt from her teacher? Like, how far along were you?
Yeah, so I asked for the excerpts after the draft was done.
Okay.
So because I had originally wanted it to be complete enough that I'd know what questions to ask them, so where they could fill in the blanks. And it was in that co-construction process that the interior designer said, I'll kill you in your sleep if you have these people plunk little things in all throughout the book at varying times and places. And so it was then that I was like, okay, let me just finish let me make sure it's done. And I mean, again, I did some tweaks and some, shifts, and I think I added think an otter thought after the fact. But yeah, it was done. And so it was a matter of figuring out where in the book I was going to put her. And of course, I put her up front. Yeah.
So how did you, if it's not too personal, how did you pose the question to them? How did you pose the request to them?
So I wrote them an email and said basically what I said to your listeners, which was how the book came to be. Like, they knew Elena and her precociousness and whatever, and that I wanted to do this thing as a surprise. They had to keep it a surprise. Please don't tell her, all that. And then I gave them a list of questions. I said, pick one of these, or do your own riff off, or pick a quote about time that you want to share, or whatever. But here are the pillars. And I gave them the intro to the book and the table of contents, so they understood kind of what the premise of the book was. And some of them were very, regimented in their answering of every question. Some of them just answered a couple of questions. Some of them did their own kind of just, missive on time, but yeah, that's how I put it out to them. Talking about decisions and, procrastination and, wisdom they had or struggles they faced with time.
Yeah, you provided so many pieces of advice and insight throughout this talk, throughout this conversation. If you put it in so many words, if you put it in so many words or just a few sentences, aside from the gift that it is to your daughter, what do you hope people take away from the book?
I hope that they take away the idea that how we greet meet and leave a moment is how we experience time. And that's why a coffee that we love sharing with a friend seems like it went by in a second, and where and how did it get to be 2 hours? Whereas slogging through or waiting in line while we're trying to get someplace seems like a short forever. And I remember this quote from it's the Stars movie. Oh my goodness. Fault in Our Stars, John Green. And at his fake funeral, the girlfriend, gives this dedication, and she says, "There's an infinite number of numbers between 0 and 1, and we didn't have that much time, but thank you for sharing with me a short infinity." And so I hope that people leave the book not only with tactics that are practical and approachable and implementable to be able to maximize how they come to those moments, but a real appreciation for how you can change your experience of time by treating it with the honor and respect that it deserves and investing in the relationships that make it better.
Yeah. That's it needs to be, if somebody is open to that message, that way of being and loving it, it has to be intentional. It has to be proactive. I think what gets us in trouble most of the time, whether we need coaching or whatever it may be, any kind of assistance, is that we're just kind of going through the motions. We're getting things done, but we're not really investing as much as we could be, or taking away as much as we could be. So I love that. That's a great reminder.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, one of my mantras, and I shared it with the group that I spoke to last week, is right here, right now. Right here, right now. Like every time you're in a moment, you're with a person, you're on a call, you're in the car, you're, in the grocery store, right here, right now. Right here, right now. And just being able to ground yourself in that way, right here, right now, you can then tap into whatever energy you choose to bring to that moment. It's when we're distracted and we're playing different time zones, and we're living in regrets or in apprehensions or whatever that is, that we end up squandering. Like I use it as the analogy of like sprinkling water versus fire hosing it. And I think fire hosing our target is it's a better way of being able to get through life.
I love that. And then wrapping up, what are you up to these days? Is there anything that I might have missed or didn't ask that you'd like to, what are you laughing at? That you'd like
I
to
got 7
cover?
more books. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Listen, I even skipped the question on what's next for your writing, because I'm like, you know what? She needs a fucking break.
Yeah,
she needs a fucking break.
Dude,
She's going to take up journaling now.
Exactly. Like, forget it, people.
But is there anything, there anything you want to share that maybe didn't come up, or what you have coming up? Like we said, we're going to put this out mid-May.
Right.
So anything
so
after
you don't
that
blow
point?
the surprise, John.
So I don't blow the surprise. Yeah.
I've worked on this enough.
Like 2 weeks before, I just tag you across all social media.
Exactly. Selfie with the book. Well, it's funny because it's on Amazon. So
yeah, I was surprised, but you're right. You can't get the copy without it being there.
You got to publish it as an author to get your, either way, Amazon, if you're watching this, that's BS. As an author, I should be able to get my behind the curtain copies before you make it public to the world.
True.
But whatever.
That's true.
Fine. Anyway.
Not bitter.
Yeah, not bitter at all. Thanks, Jeff. Anyway, Bezos, that is.
No.
So I think, for what's coming up for me, just more of the amazing work I get to do. I don't think there's anything new for me other than just new endeavors, new partnerships, new work. I'm working with a colleague of mine, trying to bring this idea of healing and trauma recovery and bias approach to to the law enforcement area, because I think I want to try to find where some of those threads are that we can pull in the healing of our humanity, of our culture, of these spaces, so that we can really use this inflection point of a lot of distress and a lot of fear and a lot of anger and a lot of distrust, and have it really catapult us forward. So I think that's one of the things that I'm really deeply focused on, is a lot of mission oriented work in that way.
Awesome. And again, we covered Bridget's own book, the book, How to Navigate Clocksuckers and
Say carefully.
and live a happy, abundant life. Oh, I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh, when I mention it at the end, I'm gonna fuck it up. I can't do that. B,
Yes,
thank you for yet
thank
another
you.
great conversation. Thank you for trusting me enough to come back for another conversation, and just thank you for everything you do.
Awesome. John, thank you. And to all the listeners, if you haven't checked out other book leads episodes, do yourself a favor and just deep dive, because you have had some really forward thinking, deep dive conversations with a lot of insightful, intelligent people. And I'm honored to be even in that same zone. So thank you.
No, I appreciate everybody's time, everybody's insights that they share, their stories. It's got some residual effects for me that I really didn't anticipate. It's, for me, it's not bullshit. It's not hyperbole. It really is. It has been life changing for me, and it's even more every season with more conversation. So I appreciate your time. And if there's anything that I might have missed, there's so much to cover. Anything you're curious about that I should have asked B, just let me know, and I'll reach out to her for any kind of additional insights, wisdom, knowledge, anything she might be able to share. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.